That's
Of
really
course,
cool.
the actual Rumble we know that year, the one on pay-per-view is won by Brett and Lex Luger. The next time you're in the ring with Sean, though, Silva had that graphic up there a moment ago. It's the bad guys and the Teamsters. We got ahead of ourselves. Survivor Series 94. What a cool little crew this is, man. I mean, you got just nothing but bona fide Hall of Famers here. Fatu, Razor Ramon, Sion, 123 Kid, British Bulldog. Then on the other side, Diesel, Jeff Jarrett, Jim Neidhart, Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels. This is a who's who. By the way, Sion is Barbarian. I mean, that's who we know him as. But you got a lot of talent in here, man. And this is a down period for the company for sure. But now instead of standing across the ring from Shawn Michaels, you're in a tag team with Shawn Michaels. And if you're seeing what I'm seeing, it's you rubbing elbows with your best pal, Owen Hart, his relative, Jim Neidhart, and two foundational members of the clique, Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels. They're going to become your big riding buddies. I know this is a dark period for the WWF, but when you look back at that graphic, it has to be nothing but fun memories for you.
But that was where I had, I worked against Kid, but I worked against Doink. This was hey, Jeff, this is Vince McMahon talking. We're going to give it about a year. We're going to get you out on the road. We're going to be working you on every show. We want you to learn this, learn that. And for the lack of a better word, just because I had known Sean so well, but man, Scott, in a way, had it not been for Sean's like, okay, because Sean and Scott became tight in AWA. That's where I think they originally bonded. And then, Scott had gone off and done his diamond stud at WCW, and then he'd got the razor gimmick. So when I got there, in a lot of ways, it was Scott and Sean and Kevin. And Kevin was still, I don't say new to the business, but he hadn't been around long, and he was the bodyguard. But that entire year of 94, and Owen in those days, he was riding with, his family, Brett and Jim, mainly Jim, and any other free rides he could figure out. So that whole year was a learning tree. We had a blast. Me getting out on the road and learning. That was the year, I'll say this, that I learned the nuances of how you do it at the WWF. And I got to give Sean and Scott, and Kevin as well, but really Sean and Scott sat under their learning tree, sat in the car rides, and heard little bits and pieces and asked the questions, and we would do something, and then the next night, because everybody watched each other's matches. Just man, it was a different environment. Obviously, a lot of house shows, but long before me and Scott started working together, he would watch a match and say, "Hey, man, try this or try that." Same with Sean, and we all car rides. So yeah, that 94 entire year was the learning tree and understanding and just trying to be a sponge. But man, what a blast it was.
Talking about that Survivor Series match, along with us here as part of our live studio audience, Eric Jones says, I hated it in 1994, but now at 45, I'm like, holy cow, it's all Hall of Famers. And I think all of us, with the benefit of hindsight, see some things that maybe we didn't see the first time. And maybe there's no better example of that than when you and I first started this podcast. I was busting your balls pretty regular about you saying that you're an unofficial member of the clique. I take a look at March of 95 and it is filled. I feel like every show that the company ran in March of 95, it was Diesel and Razor in a tag team affair taking on Jeff Jarrett and Shawn Michaels. Y'all did it in Phoenix. You did it in Denver. You did it in Anaheim, Stockton, Fresno, Ontario, Thunder Bay, Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, New York City, New York, Madison Square Garden, Boston, Massachusetts, Detroit, San Antonio, Landover. I mean, you're all over the country in this in high gear tour. And now you're back working with really the top of the card in Madison Square Garden. It's not a 60-man battle royal or whatever. It's a tag team with just littered with gold. This has got to be a big time for your career as far as feeling accomplished. But again, it's a down period. It's March of 95. Are you disappointed in the payoffs or the politics or the road or the travel? Is any of that getting to you?
And that's where the payoffs, look, I listened to other guys, and you know, Sean, he'd probably self-admit he wasn't happy with anything financially during this era. But no, I would hear Scott, and I'm the rookie around. I certainly didn't bitch. I just kind of took it all in stride. But as I sit here today, and you named all those cities, I look back and know that. So better part or all of '94, all the different opponents I had, that they were. I was going out and a multitude of opponents, and they would, back in those days, the agents would get done with the show. They'd go to a payphone and they would give a verbal um, report of the show, and then I'm sure Bruce has told you all about this. And then they would have somebody. Uh, what do you call that? That dictate it. They would write it out, and so Bruce and Pat and Vince would get the show reports and this and that. And as time went along, and obviously, the moving of the chess pieces, but when Scott, and I don't know chicken or egg who what it's either he suggested it or they came to him, but when Scott said, "Yeah, I'd like to work with Jeff at Royal Rumble '95," him being the Intercontinental Champion, that took my career, and I've said that on earlier episodes. It took my career to another level, without question. And then, yes, the '93 house show business, '94 house show business, just during that era, coming out when history I think tells, and the further and further we get away from it, it was the transition period from the golden age or golden era of WWF, and I call it the Hulkamania run, then the steroid trial and boatloads of bad press. And so we were scratching and clawing and rebuilding, and Brett was a completely different champion than Hulk was, and the in-ring product was more important, the match quality was more important, all that. And when you kind of look at the building blocks, and then '95, I win the IC title from Scott. They had and I think we're kind of skipping over a little part here, that out of that era, during this whole kind of transition, um, Diesel became world heavyweight champion. It went from Brett to Bob Backlund, and Bob Backlund, Diesel beat him in 10 seconds in the Garden, or 12 seconds on the Garden. Kevin called the office and said, "Hey, Vince, I appreciate it, but me going around the horn with Brett, with Bob Backlund, and Bob Backlund putting me over on all these house show loops, that ain't good for me or good for the card. I think we gotta move somebody in that slot." And he kind of said, "Well," and the car's kind of talking, "What about Double J?" And so when I look at that and knowing everything going on it, I don't think Vince would have gone for it just off of Kevin's word. Vince and Sean always had a unique relationship, and I think Vince, I'm sure, went to Sean and went to Scott and said, "Hey, what do you think? Yeah, this will fit." And so them putting me in that role of putting Kevin over every night was another notch of, we did it multiple places around the loop. I took Bob Backlund's place. Again, I know it's a Shawn Michaels episode, but this ties deeply to me and Sean's relationship, that Sean gave a vote of confidence. And then when it came time to ramp up to Mania, it was Scott and me in a rematch at WrestleMania, and Kevin and Sean in their match at Mania. And so they decided to do this tag. And I remember Jack Lanza, Chief Strongbow. There were other agents, the Hebners, of course, when we started hearing the numbers financially. Oh, wow, this house is up here. Oh, wow, Anaheim did a bump. Phoenix did a bump, just whatever the cards were. And so the bumps in houses, it was, I know that the four of us were like, all right, we're things are um, headed in the right direction, if you will. And that was satisfying. At that stage of my career, I was damn proud of it.